Hello everyone, welcome back. In today's episode, I'm sharing 8 true creepy and scary encounters from the Appalachian Mountains. These stories will make you think twice before setting foot on those trails again. But before we get started, don't forget to subscribe, leave a like, and share this with your friends. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I always love seeing that. Dale was the oldest guy on our crew, 64, maybe 65. This job was supposed to be a 2-week trail clearing contract out in the Iron Ridge section of the southern Appalachians, deep in the mountains, right near the Tennessee-North Carolina border. There were 6 of us in total. Owen, our field lead, had done several of these jobs before. He was one of those no-nonsense types, organized, sharp, and not easily rattled. Then there was Dale, then me, and the rest of the crew. Felix, a forestry student from Asheville with more enthusiasm than sense, but a good work ethic. Nina, who was brand new to trail work and still limped from an old soccer injury, but never stopped cracking jokes like we were at some mountain retreat. And Luke, who barely spoke the entire time. He had this stillness to him, quiet, focused, almost eerie, but never lazy. Once we were up at the work site, about 8 miles in from the nearest access road, we might as well have been cut off from the rest of the world. No service, no easy way out, and one truck waiting at the base of the fire road for when the job was done. By the 3rd day, a rainstorm hit us hard. We woke to find that the truck below had been blocked in by a landslide of rock and mud. The Rangers radioed that they'd send a cleanup team soon. That was the last we heard from anyone. After that, silence. Just the wind through the trees and our own voices. By day 11, we'd carved nearly 5 miles of new trail through some of the meanest, thickest brush I've ever seen. Wild rhododendrons so tangled, it felt alive. Thorny vines that snagged your pants and wrists, and fallen trunks that cracked like old bones under the axe. The work was grueling, but steady. Cut, drag, pile, burn, eat, sleep, repeat. My arms ached, but I almost liked the rhythm. The forest had a way of pulling you in, lulling you with its sounds until you forgot the world outside even existed. Then the disappearances started. At first, we shrugged it off. A missing coil of rope, a misplaced pair of gloves, a gas can we figured someone had left behind on the last switchback. But a couple of days later, it escalated. Owen's entire toolbox vanished overnight. Then his backup boots. We searched the camp top to bottom. Nothing. 2 nights after that, his pack was gone too. Not torn or dragged off, just missing. Owen mumbled something about a bear, but even he didn't sound convinced. There were no claw marks, no torn fabric, no disturbed food. I remember Felix laughing nervously and saying, "Bears don't unzip tents." And Owen shot him a glare that killed the humor dead. That evening, Dale came up to me while I was cleaning the hatchet by the fire. "Someone's out there," he said, calm as if he was talking about the weather. "Not a bear, not a lost hiker either. Someone's been watching us for days." I wanted to laugh, to shake it off, but something in his tone froze the words in my throat. He said it like he knew, it like he'd already seen the truth and was just letting me catch up. "They wait till we're asleep," he added, "and they take what they want. They know we're not leaving." He told Owen too. Owen brushed it off, said we'd tie everything down tighter, keep a night watch rotation if it made us feel better. But he didn't change anything. Dale stayed up anyway. I woke around 3 that night to the smell of instant coffee and saw him sitting near the dying fire, machete laid across his lap, the faint light glinting off the blade. I heard him humming something, an old country tune, low and slow, just under his breath. When I got up an hour later to take his shift, he handed me the cup, now cold, and just said, "Didn't see him, but they're close tonight." He didn't elaborate, just kept staring out past the tree line like he expected something to step out at any moment. I didn't ask questions. The next day, we moved camp about half a mile east, closer to a creek. The spot felt safer, tucked low between ridges, farther from the rusted old lookout tower we'd been hanging food from. That tower made everyone uneasy. It loomed above the trees like a dead monument. I swear, every time I passed it, I found myself glancing up, even though I never saw a thing. That evening, while Felix was boiling water and Nina was rubbing her knee, she froze mid-laugh and pointed toward the trees. Hanging between two trunks was a rope. No, not a rope, but something twisted together from our own missing gear. Shirts, straps, headlamps, packs, all knotted and braided into a line that sagged between the trees like a grotesque garland. Some of it was torn or burnt. Nina's flannel was wrapped around what looked like a ripped-up pair of jeans. Felix's jacket had been sliced into strips. It hadn't been there when we'd set up camp. Someone had strung it up while we were right there. No one spoke. Owen muttered a curse under his breath, grabbed his lantern, and said we'd hike down first thing at sunrise. He didn't even look back when he went to his tent. We didn't argue. None of us wanted to. But sunrise never came for Owen. Sometime past midnight, I woke to a sound like metal slamming against metal. Then a shout. Felix's voice, high and terrified. I scrambled out of my tent, heart hammering. 2 flashlights darted through the trees, fast, deliberate. Then a crack like a whip. Gunfire. I dropped flat, dirt in my teeth, breath caught in my throat. Felix was screaming. I could hear it, pain and panic mixed into one awful sound. I saw one of the figures, a man I think, in a dark jacket and hood, standing over him with a rifle. Another was tearing through our supplies, ripping what little we had left. Owen burst from his tent, with a shovel in his hands. I don't know if he thought he could scare them, or if it was instinct, but the rifle fired once more, and Owen fell. Just fell. No sound, no movement. Nina screamed, Luke, vanished into the darkness, running without a word. I never saw him again. Dale was already at Felix's side, dragging him behind the fire pit, pressing his hands into the gash in the kid's thigh. Blood was pouring out fast. I threw myself next to them, ripped off my shirt to use as a bandage, but it soaked through in seconds. We pressed harder, anything to stop it. The attackers didn't speak, didn't yell, just fired another shot into the air, like a warning, and melted back into the woods. Gone. We didn't move for a long time. The forest was silent again, except for Felix's ragged breathing. We stayed up till dawn, taking turns keeping him awake, keeping the fire low, whispering plans we didn't believe. They'd taken almost everything, our knives, first aid, even our maps. I remember Dale muttering under his breath, "They knew what they were doing. They've done this before." At first light, we packed what little we had left. Dale and I carried Felix in turns, 1 mile at a time, piggybacking him through the mud and brush. Nina walked ahead, scouting the trail. Luke was gone. We didn't call his name. I don't think any of us had the courage to break the silence. We left Owen's body behind. It didn't feel right, but we had no choice. Every sound in those woods made us jump. The crack of branches, the whistle of wind. It all felt alive, like the forest itself was hunting us. By the time we reached the old fire road, the sun was sinking. Felix passed out twice, his face gray and cold. Around 5 in the afternoon, just as the shadows stretched long across the trail, we saw the shimmer of a metal truck creeping along the bend. I've never screamed louder in my life. The ranger behind the wheel nearly ran off the road, trying to stop. He took one look at Felix and called for an emergency evac. Felix lived, barely. Lost a lot of blood, but they managed to save the leg. He spent a month in the hospital. Nina quit trail work the moment she got home. Dale moved to Florida, opened a tiny fishing shop near a town called Harbor Glen. He doesn't talk about the Iron Ridge job, not once. The sheriff's report said it was probably a backwoods drug crew, people using remote sites to stash supplies, taking out anyone who stumbled onto their ground. No suspects, no arrests. When I asked to see the file months later, they told me it was sealed for an ongoing investigation. That was nearly 2 years ago. But sometimes, when I'm alone on a trail and the trees start to close in, I think about that garland, our gear strung up between the trunks like trophies, and the quiet men who moved like ghosts. I don't think they were drug runners. I don't think they were any kind of men at all. And I'll never go back to those mountains again. Back when I was 31, I took a seasonal job as a trail warden in the Coldwater Bluffs Range, one of those remote stretches of the southern Appalachians where the trees crowd close and the mist never really lifts. October was the busy season, tourists everywhere, all of them chasing that perfect view of the turning leaves. My job was simple on paper: keep hikers on the designated trails, make sure they didn't wander into private land, and handle any reports of trespassing. Easy enough, or so I thought. One afternoon around 2:30, I got a radio call about an illegal campsite near a place called Raven's Pit Hollow. I'd never been there myself, but I'd heard the name whispered around the ranger station. It wasn't on any current park map, and old-timers said it bordered land still belonging to the Matters family, a name people in those parts said carefully, like it might wake something. Most of their property had rotted into ruins, collapsed barns, sheds, and forgotten foundations. But rumors said one of them still lived out there, some hermit who never left. Squatter, feral, ghost. It depended on who you asked. I grabbed my pack and hit the trail by 3. The first few miles were ordinary enough. Birds trilled, chipmunks darted across the path, and everything smelled like wet leaves and pine sap. Then, somewhere past the ridge, the forest just stopped. No birds, no insects, not even the faint drumming of a woodpecker. It was like someone had turned the sound off. The silence hit me so hard, I actually paused mid-step, suddenly aware of how loud my own breathing was. I realized I'd missed a turn when I passed this strange rock formation, a stack of stones shaped like a spine curling out of the dirt. It didn't look natural, too deliberate, too even. I doubled back and noticed faint red diamond markers nailed into the trees. They weren't park markers. Ours were yellow. These looked old. The paint faded to the color of dried blood, unevenly spaced, some so close together they almost touched, others yards apart. But they seemed to lead downhill, and since that was roughly where Raven's Pit Hollow was supposed to be, I followed. The deeper I went, the heavier the air felt, stale, thick, like I was breathing through dust. I started to smell something too. Not rot, not quite. More like dried hides or old leather left too long in a shed. When the slope leveled out, I came across a structure at the base of a thicket. At first, I thought it was a hunting blind, but the closer I got, the clearer it became that whoever built it wasn't after deer. It was made from slabs of bark, lashed together with what looked like twisted tendon, and the perimeter was lined with tiny bones. Bird bones, squirrel bones, maybe more. They'd been arranged in tidy rows, all pointing inward. It wasn't practical. It was ceremonial. I pulled out my phone to take a photo, but before I could frame it, I heard it. A whistle. One sharp, piercing note. Not casual, not like someone calling for their dog. It was too perfect, too deliberate. It came from somewhere behind me. I turned fast, expecting some idiot hiker trying to scare me. But the woods were empty, completely still. I called out anyway, asking who was there. No answer, just quiet trees. That's when I noticed it. A footprint pressed deep into the mud near the roots of an oak. Bare, human, large. It wasn't fresh, but the edges were still distinct. I crouched to get a better look, and that's when I heard it. Someone breathing behind me. Slow, wet. I spun around, my hand already gripping the bear spray clipped to my belt. Nothing. Then I saw him. Halfway up the slope, between two poplars, a man stood motionless. He wasn't wearing a shirt, just some kind of hide draped across his shoulders. The head of the animal looked like a deer, hanging over his own like a hood. His skin was grayish and streaked with dirt. His eyes caught the light in a way that didn't seem right. I didn't say anything at first, just stared. He didn't move. Finally, I raised my voice, told him he was in a restricted area and needed to turn back. He tilted his head slightly, like he was trying to remember what words were. I repeated myself, louder this time. He blinked slowly and then opened his mouth. The sound that came out wasn't speech. It was a low, dragging moan, almost like a wolf's howl, but twisted. Something trying to mimic the sound of an animal and getting it wrong. My hand went to the radio. All I got was static. When I looked up again, he was moving, slow, deliberate steps down the slope, bare feet silent against the leaves. I told him to stop, that I'd call in backup. He didn't react. That's when I saw the blade hanging from his hip. It wasn't a knife you'd buy in a store. It looked handmade, jagged, maybe stone or rusted metal, crusted with something dark. I started backing away, careful not to trip on the roots behind me. My boot slipped on wet leaves, and I slid several feet before catching myself on a stump. When I looked back up, he was crouched low, one hand pressed to the dirt like he was feeling it, or listening. His lips were moving fast, whispering words that didn't sound like English. Then he lunged. I didn't think. I just ran. Straight across the hill and into a narrow gully, branches whipping at my face. My pack slammed against my shoulders. Behind me, I could hear him laughing. A dry, broken laugh, like someone coughing up the sound instead of making it. I hit a shallow creek and waded through it, hoping the water would mask my trail. The cold bit through my boots, but I didn't stop until my lungs burned. When I finally turned, he was gone. I waited, holding my breath, listening. Nothing but the creek. For a moment, I thought maybe I'd imagined it all. Then, from somewhere up the slope, a faint clicking sound, stones tapping together in rhythm. Once, twice, 3 times. I took off again, scrambling up the far bank, slipping on the mud, tearing my knee open on a branch. My radio crackled to life, just a snippet of a voice. Say again. Then silence. I stumbled onward, following no trail at all now, just blind instinct and panic. I passed more of those rock stacks, some freshly built, damp earth, still clinging to the stones. Once, I nearly stepped on a little bundle tied with twine. Inside were bird skulls, 5 of them, arranged like a tiny crown. That's when I realized someone had been watching me the whole time. By the time I saw the cabin, the sky had turned bruised purple. It wasn't on any map, and it looked old enough to predate the park itself, maybe older. The roof sagged, the wood black with age, but thin smoke curled from a stone chimney out back. My legs were giving out. I didn't want to go near it, but the forest behind me felt worse. I knocked once. No answer. So I pushed the door open. The air inside was thick and hot, heavy with the smell of tallow and something stewing over the fire. A pot bubbled faintly in the hearth. The walls were lined with tools, hatchets, old saws, bones, and strips of leather hung from nails. Masks dangled from the rafters, dozens of them, some carved from wood, others from bark or stretched hide. One had teeth embedded in it. Another had what looked like a deer jaw sewn into the bottom. And then I saw them. Skins, hanging from pegs like coats, bear, coyote, something that might have been human. One was still dripping. My throat closed up. I backed toward the door, trying not to make a sound. That's when he appeared in the doorway, 10 feet away. Same hide draped over him, same sharp eyes. Up close, his face didn't look insane, just wrong. Like it belonged to someone who'd forgotten what people were supposed to look like. He raised one hand, palm out, as if to calm me, and said something in that same strange language. One word that rolled like a hiss through his teeth. Then he pointed past me, into the cabin. I didn't look. I just ran. Branches tore my sleeves. Thorns cut my face. My chest burned. I didn't stop until I saw the fire road. A ranger truck rolled by not long after, headlights cutting through the mist. The guy behind the wheel told me later I looked half dead. I told him there was someone in Raven's Pit Hollow, gave him the coordinates from my GPS, and refused to say another word. They sent a team up the next morning. They found the trail, the blind, even the red markers, but no cabin. Just a ring of stones where one might have stood decades ago. The air still smelled faintly of smoke. I quit that job a week later, moved to the city, took a warehouse position where the floors are flat and the lights stay on all night. And I still hear that whistle sometimes. One sharp note, clean and hollow, drifting through my dreams, like someone reminding me they're still out there, waiting for me to come back. I was 11 when my mom moved us to this forgotten slice of northern Georgia, deep in the Blackstone Highlands. It wasn't even a real town, just a hollow pressed between 2 ridges, so steep, the sky seemed like an afterthought. The air always smelled of damp bark and iron-rich soil. The kind of place where the sun disappeared by mid-afternoon and the radio gave up trying to find a signal. The old car wheezed up the last few miles of gravel road before the path gave out completely. From there, it was just forest and the house waiting for us, like something that had been holding its breath for decades. Mom said she'd inherited the place from a great aunt she barely remembered, though I suspected she didn't know much more than I did. We didn't have options. After she lost her job in Savannah and the rent fell behind, the house, free and far away, sounded like a miracle. So, we packed what fit in the car, left the rest, and drove until the concrete turned to dirt and the woods swallowed us whole. The house sat half buried in ivy. Gray siding warped and split, porch tilting hard on one corner, like something heavy had been leaning on it for years. A single window pane on the top floor was cracked from end to end, The front steps creaked like bones underfoot. Out back, hidden under a snarl of vines, was what might have once been a root cellar. I remember thinking it didn't feel like people had left. It felt like they'd escaped. No neighbors, no mail service. The nearest grocery store was a half-hour past a place called Cragton Bend, where the roads wound like snakes and logging trucks ruled the curves. Mom liked to say we were off the grid, her voice light and joking, but she didn't laugh much after dark. The first week, I tried to make it feel like home. I explored the woods, swept out my room, and climbed into the attic, which smelled like wet paper and dust. Most of the furniture downstairs was still there. Stiff-backed chairs, a kitchen table half-rotted at one leg, a coat rack hung with a moth-eaten jacket. The house didn't feel abandoned, so much as paused. Every day after chores, I went out walking, trying to map where the property ended. It felt endless, just trees, the same gray-green in every direction. Occasionally, I'd find the remains of a fence or a rusted washing machine choked in vines. That's how I was spending the afternoon I saw her. I was splitting kindling behind the house when I looked up and saw a girl standing just beyond the tree line. She didn't move or wave, just watched. I called out, asked if she was lost, but she only stepped forward enough for me to see her face. She said her name was Cora. She looked about my age, maybe a little younger, with long, pale hair tangled and full of burrs, like she'd been sleeping in the leaves. Her dress was old-fashioned, a faded green thing with tiny buttons and lace cuffs. It looked like something out of a photograph, not a thrift shop. I asked if she lived nearby. She nodded once but didn't say where. Her voice was soft when she spoke again, not shy exactly, more like she was choosing her words with care. After a few minutes, she said she had to go. Before I could ask her anything else, she turned and slipped back into the woods so quietly, it was like she'd been part of them all along. She started showing up again after that. Always in the woods, never near the house. She'd appear without sound, without warning. If I asked too many questions, she'd go quiet, but she liked to walk. So we walked. She showed me things I never would have found alone. A hollow log that smelled like rain even on dry days. A mossy outcrop where the air felt colder than anywhere else. And a narrow creek that ran clear enough to see pebbles glittering like glass under the current. Cora told stories while we wandered. Some were funny, about animals playing tricks or a man who tried to live off tree sap and turned green himself. But most were strange. She spoke of lights that floated between the trees at night and people who forgot who they were until the forest took them in. Once, she told me that if something out there saw you, you had to pretend not to notice. That was the rule. If they know you see them, she said, they follow. She didn't smile when she said it. After a while, I told my mom about her. She frowned, asked a few questions, then said there weren't any other families for miles. I said Cora lived nearby, maybe up the ridge, and Mom just shook her head, told me to be careful and stay close to home. A week later, I begged her to come meet Cora. She refused at first, said she had too much to do, but one day she followed me without telling me. I only noticed when I called Cora's name and nothing happened. No reply, no movement. Then Mom stepped out from behind a tree, grabbed my wrist, and hissed, "There's no one out here." Her face looked pale and tight, like she'd been holding her breath too long. She didn't speak the whole way back. That night, she grounded me, said I wasn't allowed past the backyard anymore. So I snuck out. Cora was waiting the next afternoon, her face thinner than before. She didn't say hello, just whispered that I couldn't talk about her again, that I'd broken a rule by bringing someone near. I told her I didn't mean to. She looked scared, like she was listening for something I couldn't hear. I asked what rule she meant, but she only shook her head. "You can't look for me," she said. "Promise." So I did. When November came early that year, frost climbed the windows and the pipes froze solid. Mom boiled water on the stove just to wash dishes. Cora didn't show for days. I figured maybe her family had moved on. Then one gray afternoon, she was just there again, standing in the creek. Her arm was wrapped in a strip of dirty cloth that looked soaked through. She said she'd been running, that she'd fallen. I asked from what. She said, "It doesn't matter. They saw me." She reached into her pocket and pulled out a little wooden doll. It had jointed arms and legs, but no face, just smooth wood where eyes and a mouth should have been. She pressed it into my hand and told me never to let it touch the ground. "If you hear them," she said, "hold it tight. They can't take you if you're holding it." That night, I woke to tapping on my window. Not the wind, not a branch. A slow, steady rhythm. Tap, pause, tap, pause. The sound of someone knocking and waiting for you to answer. My room was upstairs. Nothing could reach that high. I lay there frozen, listening, counting the seconds between taps. When morning came, I checked the window. There were scratches below the glass, deep and uneven, 3 of them, torn into the wood like claws. I didn't tell Mom. I didn't know how to. I just kept the faceless doll in my pocket, even when I slept. Days passed, then a week, then 2. Cora never came back. I went to our spot by the creek every day, waiting, whispering her name. On Halloween morning, I walked out before dawn, followed the trail past the birch grove, and sat there until the light faded. She never appeared. When I got home, my jeans were torn, my palms scraped raw, and I was crying too hard to breathe. Mom yelled at first, but when she saw me, she stopped. There were muddy handprints smeared across my jacket, too big to be mine, and in my clenched fist was the wooden doll, snapped clean in half. That night, something walked across the porch. Slow, heavy steps, deliberate. Mom grabbed the shotgun from the hallway and threw the front door open. Nothing there. Just the sound of wind rolling through the trees. She didn't go back to bed. She sat up in the living room until dawn, the shotgun across her lap, her eyes fixed on the door. 2 mornings later, we left before sunrise. She didn't say a word as we drove away, and I didn't ask her to stop. The forest thinned, then vanished behind us, swallowed by mist. Sometimes I dream about that hollow. The smell of wet earth, the sound of the creek, and once in a while, when I wake in the middle of the night, I swear I hear it again. 3 soft taps against the window pane, waiting for me to look. My aunt owns a small row of rental cabins near the base of Bearjaw Ridge, 6 in total, spaced far enough apart that guests can feel like they've escaped civilization without actually being alone. They sit right where Route 29 fades into gravel, and the gravel eventually gives up altogether, swallowed by pine and hemlock. It's not on the way to anywhere. If you wind up there, it's either because you planned to, or because you got lost long enough that the map gave up trying to help you. She rents them out mostly in the summer and fall. Hunters, off-grid types, or couples looking for a rustic weekend without reception. In winter, she shutters them up tight and waits for spring to thaw the pipes. October is always the busiest month. The woods glow with color, the air turns sharp, and people from the city flood in with their cameras and thermoses, eager for a taste of wilderness until the sun goes down and the forest starts talking back. I used to help my aunt out under the table, cleaning, swapping linens, restocking the breakfast boxes, checking smoke alarms. Easy money, quiet work. Sometimes I'd stay in town after, or drive the 45 minutes back home depending on the weather and my mood. That Friday, the guests in cabin 3 checked out early. A family of 4, 2 parents, 2 kids, booked through Sunday but gone before noon. They didn't call or text, just vanished. My aunt noticed when she stopped by with more firewood and found the keys missing and the car gone. She called me and asked if I could drive up and reset the place. I was already nearby, so I said sure. It's not far, and it's an easy job. Wipe down the counters, change sheets, vacuum up the crumbs. I got there around 12:45. The second I stepped out of the car, something felt wrong. The screen door was hanging open, creaking in the breeze. It's one of those old aluminum frames with a broken spring that lets it drift and rattle if you don't catch it. Most guests slam it by habit, but this one looked hesitant, like someone had started to shut it and then changed their mind halfway. Inside, everything looked normal at first glance. Too normal. The beds were unmade but barely used, like someone had sat on them, not slept. The stack of firewood by the stove was untouched. The complimentary breakfast box, granola bars, instant oatmeal, coffee pods, was still sealed. Only one mug had been used, a faint ring of coffee drying inside. Then I noticed the back window, unlatched. That was what made my stomach knot. People open windows all the time, sure, but not that one. It faced the forest, dense, overgrown, no view worth having. The curtain was breathing softly in the draft. The whole place felt stale and cold, like someone had left in a hurry without bothering to shut the world back out. Nothing was missing, nothing broken, just wrong. Like a pause that never ended. I latched the window, shut the door properly, ran through my cleaning checklist as fast as I could, and told myself to shake off the feeling. I should have gone home right after. I didn't. Behind cabin 6, there's an old trail that climbs up into the ridge. It's not on any map. Just a deer path widened by boot prints over the years, winding 2 miles through hardwoods and mossy rock until it opens to an overlook where you can see the whole valley. My aunt had shown it to me when I was a kid. I don't know why I decided to hike it that day. Maybe to clear my head, maybe because the cabin felt like it was holding its breath. The trail was slick from rain earlier in the week. About 10 minutes in, I saw footprints in the mud. One set, fresh, narrow soles, deep heels, no tread pattern. Not hiking boots, not sneakers. They looked almost like dress shoes. Who walks a ridge in dress shoes? I followed without thinking. A few minutes later, I found a flannel shirt hanging from a low branch. Red plaid, adult-sized. Not dropped, not tossed. Hung neatly, like someone had draped it there on purpose. Sunlight was warming the fabric, but the air was cold. I looked around. Nothing but trees and wind. Then came the sock. A single gray sock stuffed into the hollow of a rotten log, tucked in like someone had pressed it there deliberately. That's when the silence hit me. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. 5 minutes later, I found the backpack, sitting upright in the middle of the path, clean, zipped. It looked like it had just been set down. I crouched beside it, glanced around again, then unzipped it. Inside, a phone with a dead battery, a charger cord, a North Carolina state ID, girl named Ava, born in 2003, so about 21, half a granola bar, a cracked vape, a mostly full water bottle, and one hiking shoe. Just one. That's when I stopped talking to myself out loud. I zipped it up, left it where it was, and kept walking, slower now. Every step seemed too loud. The trail narrowed the farther I went, drop off on one side, thorn bramble on the other. not a place you'd want to trip. Then I heard something up ahead, a twig snapping. I crouched low behind a rock, just as a man appeared around the bend. Tall, thin, dark jacket, hood up, hands in pockets. He walked like he knew the trail. No hesitation, no looking around. Just steady, deliberate steps. He passed 20 feet in front of me, didn't glance my way. Then he stopped, turned around slowly, and looked back down the trail. Not at me, just at the empty space I'd come from. He stared for a long time, head tilted slightly, then kept walking until he vanished around the curve. I didn't follow him on the trail. I cut into the trees instead, slipping between trunks, trying to move quietly, but failing. Every leaf seemed to shout beneath my boots. Then I saw her. She was maybe 50 feet below the trail, slumped against a birch tree. Blonde hair matted, one shoe missing, jacket gone. Her arms were wrapped around her knees, like she'd been sitting there a long time. When she lifted her head, her eyes met mine. She tried to speak but couldn't form words at first. Then she whispered one thing, hoarse and shaky. "Help." I scrambled down the slope, asked if anything was broken. She shook her head weakly but couldn't stand. When she tried, her legs gave out completely. I told her I'd get her back to the cabins. She nodded, barely. I lifted her. She was light, too light, and started climbing. Step by step, slow and brutal. Halfway down the ridge I heard it. Whistling. 4 notes. Soft, tuneless, repeating. It wasn't close, but it was behind us. I didn't turn around. I just kept walking faster, her shallow breathing against my neck. The whistling stopped after a minute, but the forest stayed silent. When we reached the cabins, I didn't even look toward the one I'd cleaned. I carried her straight to the main office. My aunt had installed a panic button a few years back after a black bear tore through someone's cooler. Said it connected straight to the county sheriff. I hit it hard enough to crack the plastic. The first cruiser arrived in 15 minutes. The girl, Ava, was barely conscious. Her lips were blue. She kept mumbling the same thing between gasps. Trailhead, 51, trailhead, 51. A deputy carried her to the car like she weighed nothing. They didn't ask me much, just told me to stay put. One officer went up the trail with a flashlight. When he came back 20 minutes later, his face had changed. Pale, drawn tight. He didn't say what he'd found, only told his partner they were closing the trail and calling for backup. They put yellow tape across the entrance before sunset. That night, I didn't go home. I couldn't. I stayed in cabin 1 with the curtains drawn, staring out the window toward the ridge. Around 3 in the morning, I thought I heard it again. Those same 4 whistled notes, faint, coming from somewhere up the hill. Not a melody, not a tune. Just sound, for the sake of being heard. The next day, the sheriff told us the investigation was ongoing. The girl was alive, but wouldn't talk. He said they'd found signs of a struggle near the ridge overlook. When I asked about the man, he said they hadn't found any footprints but mine. The cabins reopened the following spring, but I never went back. My aunt says sometimes guests report hearing someone whistling at night from the trees behind cabin 3. She laughs it off, says it's just the wind. But the whistle isn't the wind. It pauses between every 4th note, like it's waiting for someone to answer. I was 19 when I started helping my aunt each fall by clearing the leaves off the roof of her mountain cabin. She gave me $20 for it. Not much even back then, but I didn't do it for the money. I liked the quiet. The place sat tucked in a remote fold of the southern Blue Ridge Mountains, far from the nearest town, where the paved road turned to gravel and then gave up entirely. Once you reached her clearing, it felt like the rest of the world had simply let you go. She only stayed there during deer season, but she kept it maintained year-round. I think she liked knowing it was there, untouched and waiting, her safety net, in case everything else fell apart. That year, it was late October, when she texted me the new code for the lockbox on the porch and said there was a thermos of hot cider in the fridge if I wanted it. I got there around noon, parked in the dirt pull-off where the road ended, and hauled my gear up the steps. The cabin looked exactly the same, simple, sturdy, dark wood that caught the autumn light in streaks of amber. The smell of pine sap mixed with that sharp metallic scent of cold air. Inside, everything was just as it always was. The folded blankets on the couch, the gas stove with its single-dented kettle, the framed photograph of her old hunting dog. It was like time froze the day she last locked the door. I didn't bother settling in. The ladder leaned where I'd left it last year, and the roof was thick with leaves, brown and orange layers matted together from rain. I climbed up, started clearing section by section, dragging the heaps down to the edge and pushing them off in soft, dry waves. It was peaceful work, almost meditative. Somewhere far off, I could hear the faint whisper of the creek that ran along the ridge. About halfway through, I heard it. Footsteps. Soft, deliberate crunches in the woods behind the cabin. Not the scurry of an animal. Too measured. I froze, rake in hand, listening. For a few seconds, they came closer, then stopped. Usually, when a hiker passes, you can hear them moving through, fading in and out with the terrain. This was different. Just a few steps, and silence. I waited, but the woods went still. Even the birds had gone quiet. After a moment, I climbed down, brushed off my gloves, and went inside. I put the kettle on the gas burner and pulled out my aunt's old logbook from the drawer by the sink. She wrote in it after every visit. Weather notes, repairs, sometimes little reminders to herself about where she left supplies. The last entry was from August. Everything normal, nothing strange. I poured some cider, grabbed my paperback from my bag, and stepped onto the porch. The air had that heavy stillness you only notice when the forest stops breathing. Then, between two maples at the edge of the clearing, I saw someone. They were standing perfectly still, maybe 20 yards out. The light caught them at an angle that made it hard to see detail. Just the shape of dark clothes, hood up, facing the cabin. They didn't move, didn't tilt their head or shift their stance. I couldn't see their face. My first instinct should have been to call out, but something stopped me. I just sat there, frozen, cider cooling in my hand, trying to convince myself I wasn't seeing what I thought I was seeing. After maybe 20 seconds, the figure turned, slowly, then walked back into the woods, unhurried, deliberate. I stood up, heart pounding, and watched until the trees swallowed them. Inside, I locked the door, checked every window, front, back, even the tiny bathroom one over the sink, all latched tight. I thought about leaving, but it was already late afternoon, and there was no phone reception until you hit the main road miles down the ridge. The idea of walking that stretch in the dark didn't appeal to me. I decided to stay the night. I made some soup, read for a while by the propane lantern. The cabin walls creaked occasionally, but that was normal. Around 1 in the morning, I started nodding off in the armchair when I heard a knock. Not on the door, on the back wall. Just one. A solid, dull thud, like a heavy hand striking wood. I froze, waited, listened. It didn't happen again, and for a moment, I thought maybe I'd imagined it. Then about 5 minutes later, another knock, this time from the left side of the cabin. Same thing. One knock. Silence. 5 minutes later, another from the right wall. Always one. Always spaced apart. Always from a different direction. It didn't make sense. The ground outside was covered in twigs and pine needles. Even a raccoon would have made noise moving around. But between each knock, nothing. Not a single step. I turned off the lantern, sat in the dark, pressed against the floor beside the couch, barely breathing. I waited for the next one. It never came. The first gray light started filtering through the window around 6. I stayed frozen until I could see the outline of trees through the curtains. When I finally opened the door, the clearing looked the same as it had the day before. No footprints, no disturbed leaves, not even a scuff mark on the wood where the knocking had been. I packed fast, locked up, and walked the whole trail down the ridge without stopping once. Every sound in the woods made me flinch. I didn't look back. 2 weeks later, my aunt called. She sounded uneasy, said she'd gone up to check the deer stand and found it wrecked, straps cut clean through, the platform gone entirely. But someone had nailed something to the tree where it used to be. What was it? I asked. She hesitated before answering. Looked like a backpack, flattened out, nailed through the straps. I felt something cold settle in my chest. She said there was a sock inside and a paperback book, both moldy, chewed around the edges like something had tried to eat them. She asked if they were mine. I told her no, they weren't. I hadn't said anything about the figure in the woods or the knocking, and I still haven't. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about it. The way the walls had sounded so clean when the knocks hit. Not hollow, not soft, but smooth, like the sound of wood struck with something hard. Not hands, something else. A few days later, I went through the photos I'd taken on my phone while I was up there. Most were just the usual. Trees, the trail, a view from the roof overlooking the clearing. I almost deleted them all at once, but something stopped me. I zoomed in on that last picture. Behind one of the trees at the edge of the clearing was a figure, just barely visible. The same dark hoodie, the same stillness, but the head was tilted at an angle no human neck could hold, too far to the side, too heavy, like it had been bent and left that way. I stared at it for a long time, then deleted the photo. I never went back after that. My aunt still keeps the cabin, though she doesn't stay overnight anymore. Sometimes she asks if I remember the old trail up the ridge, says she hears things out there after dusk. 3 slow knocks on the porch wall, always spaced apart, always from a different direction. I tell her it's just the wind, but every time I say it, I can hear that single solid sound in my head again. The kind that doesn't echo, doesn't creak, the kind that waits. I'd been 22 that autumn, burnt out from work and the endless noise of city life. My brother-in-law, Ethan, owned a hunting cabin deep in the northern Georgia hills, tucked somewhere in the folds of the Mountains, where cell service disappeared and the roads turned into suggestions. When I told him I needed space, he said, "Take it. Just keep the gate locked, swap out the batteries in the trail cams, and don't mess too much with the propane." I didn't ask what that last part meant. I should have. The first few days felt perfect, the kind of quiet you can actually hear. I'd wake whenever the sun hit the windows, make coffee so strong it tasted like campfire smoke, and sit on the steps, watching the fog lift off the trees. The cabin smelled of dust, pine, and gas, but I got used to it. There was an old battery radio on the counter, one of those with the wire antenna you have to bend into impossible shapes to catch a signal. It only picked up 2 a.m. stations, but I didn't care. When it lost connection, it filled the air with soft bursts of static that almost sounded like whispers. I joked to myself, it was the forest learning to talk. By day 7, the silence wasn't peaceful anymore. It pressed on my chest like a weight. That morning, while flipping through an old wildlife guide I'd found in a drawer, I heard a faint rustle behind me. A thin plastic crinkle, quick and sharp. I turned, expecting maybe a grocery bag caught in a draft. But there it was, hanging neatly on the hook by the front door. A small white trash bag, tied tight with a double knot, and a yellow sticky note on the front. The handwriting was neat, slanted, not mine. Leave outside for pickup. I stared at it for a full minute. There was no pickup out here, no trash service, no other cabins nearby, nothing but woods and dirt. I told myself maybe I'd done it half asleep, a weird leftover habit from the city. Still, something about the handwriting made me uneasy, too tidy, too deliberate. I carried the bag outside and set it beside the fire pit. The woods stared back, silent. When I went back inside, the radio had come alive again. The static wasn't random this time. It had rhythm, a pattern like someone trying to tap out a code. I leaned close, adjusting the tuner, and underneath the fuzz came a soft, steady sound. Breathing. Slow. Human. I switched it off so fast, the antenna snapped back and slapped the wall. That night, I left the lantern burning low. Around 3 a.m., I woke to a sound on the back porch. Not footsteps, not claws. Tapping, gentle, rhythmic, like someone politely knocking with one finger. 3 taps, pause, 3 more, then silence. I didn't move. My heart thudded hard enough that I could feel it in my teeth. The sound stopped, but I didn't sleep again. By morning, the bag was gone. 2 days later, it came back. I'd just finished brushing my teeth when I heard the screen door creak open, the slow kind of creak that builds like a sigh. I grabbed Ethan's shotgun from the wall and went to the window. The clearing outside glowed in the moonlight. Empty, no movement, no shadows. Then came the sound again, plastic, soft, shifting plastic. I turned toward the noise and my blood went cold. The bag was sitting in the middle of the living room floor, gently swaying as if it had just been placed there. I waited a long time before I touched it. When I finally tore it open, I found a handful of brittle twigs, 2 rotting apples, and a few dried leaves, arranged in a neat little bundle. That was it. I carried the bag outside, dumped it into the woods, and hurled the empty plastic down the ridge. When I turned back, I saw muddy handprints smeared across the door. Small ones, child-sized, perfectly formed. I didn't sleep that night. By the next morning, I was ready to leave. But something about packing up so suddenly made me feel stupid, like I was giving up over nothing. Maybe I was exhausted. Maybe my nerves were just shot. I half-packed anyway, just in case. That evening, I bolted both doors, nailed the back window shut, and turned the lantern up bright enough to bleach the shadows off the walls. Midnight came. Then the sound did too. A single porch board creaked, then silence. I held my breath. The doorknob rattled. Not softly, not random. Someone was testing it. Slow, patient clicks, like they were trying keys one by one. Click, pause, click. I turned off the lantern and crouched behind the kitchen table. My heartbeat filled the room. The rattling stopped. Then came 3 knocks. Not on the back door, on the bathroom door. The bathroom was inside, 10 feet away. I gripped the shotgun tighter, whispering to myself, "No one's here." It sounded ridiculous, but it was the only thing I could think to say. The latch shifted. The door creaked open an inch. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. Something whispered from inside the bathroom. Not words exactly, more like the echo of a voice trying to remember how to speak. I yelled, "Who's in there?" My voice cracked. No reply, just silence. I turned on every light in that cabin and searched everywhere. Behind the curtains, under the bed, the crawl space. Nothing, no footprints, no open windows, no explanation. I sat on the couch till sunrise, shotgun across my knees, jumpy at every whisper of wind. When I finally drifted off near morning, I dreamed, or maybe remembered, walking barefoot through the forest. The leaves were wet and cold. Something followed close behind me, close enough that its whisper brushed the back of my neck. My name, breathed out like steam. I woke gasping, sweat-soaked and trembling. I went to make coffee and froze. The bag was back, sitting neatly on the counter. Same one, same knot, same sticky note. The smell hit first, sweet and rotten. I opened it anyway. Inside were the same twigs, the same apples, the same handful of dried leaves, arranged exactly the same way. That was it, for me. I shoved my things into my pack, didn't bother folding or checking anything. I locked the cabin from the outside, heart hammering, and hiked down the trail until I got a single flicker of service on my phone. I called my friend Logan and told him to meet me at the gas station by Lake Winona, the nearest place with light and people. While I waited, I sat on the curb under the buzzing sign, trying to breathe, trying not to think about the way the note's handwriting curved, sharp, clean, too practiced. Logan showed up an hour later. He took one look at me and said, "You look like hell." On the drive back, I told him most of it, not all. I didn't mention the whispers, or the breathing through the radio, or how, as we drove past the tree line, I thought I saw something pale standing between the trunks, just far enough back that the headlights didn't quite reach it. A few days later, Ethan called to ask if I'd made it back safe. I told him yes. He paused for a while, then said, "You didn't happen to leave any of your stuff behind, did you?" I said no. He didn't reply for a moment. Then he said, "Because when I went up there yesterday, there was a plastic bag hanging from the porch hook, same kind you use for groceries, tied up with a yellow note on it." "What did it say?" I asked. He hesitated before answering. "Pickup complete." That was the last time I spoke to him about the cabin. He sold it a few months later, said he was tired of maintaining something so far out in the woods. I didn't argue. Sometimes, though, when I'm alone in my apartment and the old air vents click in the dark, I still hear it. The faint rustle of plastic, the scrape of small hands on wood, the slow, polite tapping from somewhere just beyond the wall. The ranger station where I was assigned sat deep in the western Carolina range, far past where the last paved road frayed into old fire trails that nobody bothered maintaining anymore. It was the kind of outpost they probably built half a century ago, when people thought sticking a single structure in the middle of nowhere would somehow keep watch over miles of forest. Just 3 of us rotated shifts, and that October I drew the short straw, night duty alone for nearly the entire month. The station itself was 2 levels, weathered timber on top, stone foundation below. It creaked like an old ship, every board complaining with each step, and the basement stayed cold, no matter how much heat you pushed through the vents. It wasn't haunted in the storybook sense, but it had a weight to it, a quiet that didn't just settle, It clung. You could feel it in your teeth. My job was simple. Keep the radio live, log the weather, monitor for distress calls, and take a nightly loop around the ridge trail, about 1.5 miles total. It wasn't a hard post, just lonely. The ridge had a view that was supposed to be beautiful, but even in daylight, it never sat right with me. The valley below always looked wrong, too dim, too still, as if the sunlight bent away from it. I told myself it was the tree cover, or the angle of the slope. Something explainable. My 5th night on duty, I was in the radio room downstairs, half asleep, flipping through old meteorology logs. Busy work. The air smelled faintly of burnt coffee and dust. Around 1 in the morning, I heard it. 4 distinct footsteps above me. Not hurried, not loud, just deliberate. Thump, 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 thump. Then nothing. I froze. Every instinct went rigid at once. The station was locked tight, and there were no vehicles outside. I waited for more. Another step, a door, something. But silence pressed down like a lid. I stood, heart kicking hard in my chest, and checked the clock. 1:03 a.m. I didn't want to go upstairs, but doing nothing was worse. So I took the flashlight from the desk and climbed the steps. The front door was bolted, the side door locked, even the back supply entrance secured. Everything in its place. The coffee pot sat unplugged, chairs tucked neatly under the table, cabinets closed. No footprints, no open windows, nothing. I radioed dispatch and asked, as casually as I could, whether anyone else had been scheduled for the night. No, they said. Just you, Ranger Harlow. I hung up without mentioning what I'd heard. What would I even say? Someone took a midnight stroll through the ceiling? When I turned back toward the desk, I noticed something small, but wrong. The clipboard. The one I always kept hanging on the hook beside the radio panel. Gone. I hadn't touched it. I checked the floor, under the chair, behind the locker. Nothing. My pulse started to climb. I tried convincing myself I'd misplaced it earlier, that I was overtired, that there was a reasonable answer. By 2:20, I forced myself to step outside for the ridge walk. The flashlight's beam cut clean through the mist, but the woods didn't sound right. No crickets, no wind, not even the soft creak of trees shifting. It was like walking through a photograph. Everything frozen in place, waiting. My own footsteps felt too loud. At the overlook, I swept the beam across the slope below. That's when I saw it. The clipboard, propped perfectly upright against the base of a pine tree, 20 feet down. Not lying flat, not tossed, placed, balanced. I stared so long my eyes watered. My brain went into overdrive trying to rearrange the facts. Maybe I brought it out here yesterday. Maybe it fell out of my pack. Maybe someone was screwing with me. But I never carried it on the trail, and it wasn't dirty or damp. It looked freshly set. I climbed down, grabbed it fast, and turned in a slow circle, shining my light through the trees, no movement. Stillness so thick I could hear my own heartbeat. I jogged back up, half expecting to see something waiting at the top of the ridge. But the path was empty. When I stepped back into the basement, the radio hissed alive. Static, then a short burst. The sound you get when someone clicks their mic once and lets go. No voice, just that sharp pop. I wrote it all down. The time, the direction, the exact angle the clipboard had been facing. It felt ridiculous, but it was all I could do. I checked every lock again, then sat with my back against the wall until the gray of morning started to creep through the blinds. For a few nights, everything went back to normal. Then it began again. Different things this time. Once, I heard a drawer slide open upstairs and slam shut. Another night, the coffee pot clicked on by itself even though I'd unplugged it weeks ago. The strangest was when I returned from my patrol and found all the trail maps pulled from the rack, stacked neatly in a perfect square in the center of the floor. I never saw anyone, never heard voices. But every time I came back, something had shifted. Small things. Just enough to tell me I wasn't alone. When I mentioned it to the other two rangers, they laughed, said night duty was getting to me, that I needed a break. Their shifts stayed quiet, dead quiet. Not one weird noise, not one moved object, just mine. After that, I started dreading the drive out. I'd park at the edge of the station clearing, headlights carving through fog, and just sit there for a few minutes, hand still on the ignition. It wasn't fear exactly, it was expectation, like walking into a room where someone's already waiting for you. My last night there, I knew something was off before I even unlocked the door. The air smelled wrong, metallic, like old wiring and damp earth. I went through the routine anyway, set my pack down, logged the temperature, the barometer reading, the wind direction, anything to keep my hands busy. Then I went to the bathroom to splash water on my face. I was gone maybe 2 minutes. When I came back, the desk was empty. Everything, radio, flashlight, logbook, my ID, gone. Wiped clean like the surface had been reset. I ran upstairs, doors locked, windows latched, nobody. When I came back down, all of it was there again. Every single thing, arranged exactly how I'd left it. Except for one detail. The flashlight was on. Its beam pointed straight at the far wall, steady and silent. I turned it off and stuffed it into my pack. I didn't write another report, didn't log another weather note. I sat on the bottom step until the first hint of daylight. I didn't walk the ridge. I didn't touch the radio. When the sun finally hit the trees, I packed up and drove down to headquarters. I filled out a maintenance form and wrote that the station had electrical issues, that equipment was misfiring, that I thought the building might need inspection. I didn't mention the footsteps or the missing clipboard or the smell of metal in the air. I didn't say how. When I left, I could swear the front window reflected something standing behind me that wasn't there when I turned around. They granted my request for transfer without a single question. I was reassigned to a smaller post closer to town, where the woods are thinner and there's always traffic noise somewhere in the distance. I never went back to that ridge. But sometimes, when I'm alone on late patrols and the forest gets too still, I'll hear it again. 4 steps, not fast, not slow, deliberate, always right behind me. I don't turn around anymore. I'd taken a seasonal job doing trail maintenance at a forestry outpost near Carrion Fork, tucked deep in the Copperhead stretch of the southern Appalachians. It was just me, Dale, and Jordan. 3 guys tasked with clearing brush, repainting trail markers, and refueling the supply sheds near the lookout towers. That morning, like most mornings, I was hauling wood from the pile behind the main station. We used it to heat the cabins and boil water when the propane ran low. My gloves were stiff with cold, breath fogging in front of me, when something off to the side of the path caught my eye. Footprints, not boot prints, not sneakers, bare feet, 2 perfect impressions in the frost, each one crisp and detailed. Toes, arches, heels. Whoever made them hadn't worn shoes, and they hadn't been there long. The frost hadn't even started to melt inside the prints yet. I stood there staring at them, my skin crawling under my jacket. The prints came out from the tree line and disappeared into the woods like the person had stepped out, then gone back in. I scanned the trees, expecting to see someone, a hunter maybe, or a lost hiker. But there was nothing. Just the thick tangle of forest, swallowing light, the way deep water swallows sound. I didn't follow the trail. I didn't mention it right away either. What could I say? Hey guys, some barefoot weirdos running laps through the frost? It sounded ridiculous. Still, it stayed with me. That night, the three of us sat in the main cabin eating canned stew by the fire. I brought it up casually, trying not to sound nervous. Dale barely looked up. "Don't go nosing around out there," he said. "Some things in these woods don't like being seen." He said it the way he said most things. Flat, half a joke, half a warning. Jordan laughed, but it wasn't a comfortable laugh. No one said much after that. The next morning, I checked the spot again. The frost had melted. The prints were gone. No trace left. But that wasn't what made me uneasy. The missing rake was. It had been leaning against the side of the shed the day before. Now it was just gone. I asked Dale and Jordan if either of them had moved it. Both swore they hadn't. Jordan shrugged. Maybe a bear dragged it off. I wanted to believe that. Bears did weird things sometimes. Ripped into trash, knocked over toolboxes, even stole gloves. But I'd never heard of one carrying off a rake. That night, for the first time since I started the job, I locked my cabin door. The next day, we found the rake. It was standing upright against the old gate at the top of Tower Trail. Not tossed or buried, just propped there neatly, handle clean, metal teeth gleaming. There were no footprints around it, human, animal, or otherwise. The leaves and pine needles blanketing the path hadn't even been disturbed. Jordan muttered, "What kind of animal returns tools?" No one answered. That night, I woke up to the faint sound of something, metal shifting outside. I checked the clock, just past 1:00 a.m. I lay there in the dark, listening to the wind creak through the trees. But then I realized it wasn't wind. The rhythm was too even, too deliberate. Metal sliding, then stopping, then a quiet click, like something being set down gently. I waited until dawn before I went out to look. Nothing. The yard looked untouched. That afternoon, I went to check the tool shed again. The door was unlocked. We always kept it latched, not because we were scared of thieves. There wasn't anyone around for miles, but to keep raccoons and squirrels from tearing things up. Inside, everything looked fine, except for the axe. It was sitting dead center on the workbench, blade polished to a mirror shine. Someone had sharpened it overnight. I could see my reflection in the edge when I picked it up. It sliced through a scrap of kindling like it was paper. I didn't tell the others. I just locked up tight and went back to the main lodge. That night, none of us really slept. Even Dale, who'd spent half his life in the woods, was jumpy. We all bunked in the main cabin together, pretending it was about the cold. Around 3 a.m., the knocking started. 4 knocks. Always 4. Not loud, not frantic. Soft, deliberate. On the back door. We'd grab flashlights, rush outside, check the porch, the yard, the tree line. Nothing. Not a sound, not a footprint. Just mist thick enough to blur your breath. It happened again the next night, and the one after that. Always at the same time. Always 4 knocks. By the 4th night, Jordan was shaking. "We need to catch whatever this is," he said. So we set up the trail cameras. One behind the shed, one near the water tank, one facing the edge of the woods. We double-checked the batteries and made sure the lenses were clean. Dale grumbled about it, said electronics couldn't be trusted, but he went along. The next morning, one camera was gone. Not broken or knocked over. Gone. The other 2 were still there, but the footage was useless. Both feeds cut out at 2:38 a.m. and came back at 3:39. Just static in between. But there was one detail. Right before the static started, the microphone on the camera near the shed picked up a voice. Close, right against it, whispering, "Don't look back," over and over, in this steady, almost calm tone. "Don't look back, don't look back." We left the next day. No big talk about it. No argument. Just silent agreement. Jordan had his bag half packed before I even said anything. Dale didn't even finish his coffee. We threw our stuff together, left most of the supplies behind, hiked 3 miles down to the truck without saying a single word. The woods felt wrong the whole way out. Not quiet anymore. Too full of tiny, nervous noises. Branches creaking, leaves shifting with no wind. We reached the truck and didn't look back. I don't think any of us even breathed until we hit the highway. I quit 2 days later. Took a new job at a park near the city. Flat trails, paved paths, dog walkers, joggers, kids on scooters. People everywhere. The noise is constant, but it's a kind of noise that feels safe. About a month after we left Carrion Fork, I got a voicemail from Dale. He sounded off, his voice lower, slower. He said he'd gone back to grab some tools we'd left behind and wanted me to know something. The shed door was open again, he said. Didn't touch it, just walked away. Then quieter. But the rake was back where it started. I called him the next day. He didn't answer. I called again a week later. Still nothing. Jordan told me later that Dale had stopped showing up for work entirely. Packed up, disappeared. Nobody knew where he went. Sometimes, when I walk the paved trail at the park near closing, I catch the faintest sound. 4 slow knocks, echoing from somewhere past the trees. I tell myself it's construction, or maybe a loose gate swinging in the wind. But every time I turn to look, there's nothing there. And once, after a night shift, I found a rake propped neatly against the park's main gate. Handle spotless, blade shining, no prints in the mud around it. I didn't touch it.